I make it no secret that I'm a pretty big fan of Ren and Stimpy. It may have left a bad aftertaste given the countless gross-out cartoons it inspired, but alongside other greats like the other early Nicktoons, Animaniacs, and The Simpsons, it opened our eyes to the boundless creative energy television animation was still capable of. However, it's also no secret that this show was a nightmare to work on. From a look at the TV Tropes trivia page for this show alone, you'll find countless horror stories of just how awful the production troubles for this show were. And while it doesn't make me question my love for the show, it does make me question the sanity of the man behind it all. One Michael John Crickfalusi, also known as John K. And who better to describe this man than voice acting legend himself, Billy West, the voice of Stimpy. Genius is the twin brother of madness. Both live in a world created by their own ego. When I go to work for someone, I never bring my personal problems to the arena. The creators of most shows I've done don't seem to do that either. John K wasn't a little bit difficult to work with, he was darn near impossible to work with. His abuse of actors, including myself, is legendary and was not so much about the search for perfection, it was about borderline sadism and control. His whole fixation with hell dads and boys and torture and punishment, well, I've made millions and millions of people laugh, but I don't get what's so funny about endless repetitions of that crap that he dotes on. There's a difference between cries for help and comedy. So let's dive deeper into just how much of a clusterfuck this show was to work on. Also, by the way, let's talk about will be the moniker for most, if not all, of my reviews from now on. I like to be a bit more informal and a tad brief compared to some other reviewers, and using this name lets me talk about pretty much anything I want to. So let's get into some of the problems this show faced. Dear God, this show was riddled from the start with poor communication. Like for one, by this point, Spumco was only an illustration company, not an animation studio. What? Thanks to creative differences between the network's head at the time and the show's staff, there were constant disagreements and confusion over just how far too far really was, discussed on an issue-to-issue basis. The absurdist filmmaking techniques the show was known for were also a point of contention amongst executives, leading to the team having to over-explain most of the more bizarre gags. John K. also wanted the show to never use scripts, only storyboards, having to fly to New York every time the network needed to approve stories. Bob Camp admitted that the team had a shitty fuck you attitude the Nickelodeon executives simply weren't prepared to deal with. While Season 1 has some of the most iconic and beloved episodes of the entire series, much of it was massacred by poor outsourcing courtesy of the Philippines-based Phil Cartoons. Responsible for all the ink and paint work for this season, much of the artwork was ruined by cheap Xeroxing, poor color choices, and even changing drawings and entire scenes of animation outright without the consent of Spumco. Rather humorously, a few of these errors were intentionally kept in the final show, the most famous being Stimpy's pupils accidentally turning pure black in the Breakfast Tips segment. Bob Jock, one of the most prolific staff members of the first two seasons, had to fight tooth and nail to turn in passable results for Stimpy's invention, but even then a few mistakes were still left in. By the time Season 2 rolled around, the team switched to digital ink and paint, but that came with its own set of problems, still being a new and rudimentary form of technology. Censorship is easily one of the biggest sources of friction for the show. Nickelodeon was pretty uneasy with its gross-out nature, and every single episode was met with constant revisions. Anything related to religion, politics, alcohol, or tobacco was put under a microscope by standards and practices. And while George Liquor was intended to be a regular character on the show, Nickelodeon allegedly hated the character, limiting his appearances. This is why John K. still owns the rights to the character, and how Kids Without Labels is able to be the abomination we all wanted it to be. To be fair, it's impressive just how much of the more off-color content managed to make it on the air, but for real, Rocko's Modern Life makes this show's humor seem forced and obvious. Hey, Static Cling finally has a release date, while Ren and Stimpy will never be brought back ever. Do we really have to talk about John K.? We really have to talk about John K. For one, he refused to hire anyone who didn't meet the standards of Spumco's founders, which is a rule I'm pretty sure only he would want the studio to have. This not only led to the show having to be done by an incredibly small and largely understaffed team, but the staff members that were hired regularly had their drawings torn up if they didn't meet John's exact expectations. Here's the thing though, John K's perfectionism is easily the biggest double-edged sword of the show's production. It led to some amazing cartoons, but frankly, those cartoons just weren't getting done on time. It reached its apex in September of 1992 when John point blank told Nickelodeon, Spumco episodes will cost what they cost and take as long as they need. Now, I'm all for taking time to ensure a quality product, but frankly, Nickelodeon didn't have enough material to work with in its time slot. So naturally, they were furious and fired John K on the spot. John K always cites man's best friend as the true reason he was fired, but really, come on. And don't even get me started on Adult Party Cartoon. I already did a video on that show, so I won't go in depth here, but I don't even know why they rehired John K for that project since the exact same schedule slip issues happened there too. I don't really know how to end this video off, so I'll talk a little bit about the aftermath. The games era is definitely more scattershot than the Spumco era, but I'd still consider it a good cartoon. Bob Camp stayed on with the series as creative director, and so did Billy West, portraying Ren in addition to Stimpy from now on. It's actually kind of funny to me how Bob Camp is pretty much the perfect antithesis to John K. I can't confirm if he's that friendly or agreeable, but nothing speaks to the contrary. Especially the fact that he's gone on record saying that a huge part of the series' issues was due to the staff's brash attitudes, something I'm sure John K would never admit in a million years. As for the episodes themselves, I have to say, while it's a bit of a rarity, the high points are just as high as the ones in the Spumco era. To be fair, a lot of the ideas, especially in Season 3, were taken directly from ones started at Spumco, but I think with a greater sense of control without John K, these episodes benefited from the change in staff. Take Stimpy's cartoon show, for example, probably my favorite episode of Season 3. It was pitched and co-written by John K, but retooled a tad for the final product, specifically changing Ren's role in the cartoon's production from executive to producer. In the DVD commentary, while I seemed to still enjoy the episode, John K noted how the switch made it feel like it became an attack on him. At least that's how I see it. It's very obvious Ren's producer role was heavily modeled after John K, down to the exact same glasses he wears, but I honestly think that benefited the episode in the long run. And besides, the role of a producer is way more relatable than the role of an executive. So that's me talking about the history of Ren and Stimpy and its problems for a good few minutes. Good show, clusterfuck of a production schedule. My name's Justin, and I'm gonna go do some stuff. Bye guys.